Hi, everybody. I'm Beth Hildenbrand, and this is All Booked Up. Tonight, our special guest is David E. Gordon, and I have read his book, and I'm very excited to talk to him about it. Well, I've read his first book, he has more. Uh, so I'm going to turn it over to David and let him tell us a little bit about himself, and then we'll get on with the show. David?
Sounds good. Beth, it's great to meet you in person.
Thank
Um,
you. You too.
so, David Gordon, I am a corporate finance um, person. I work in the city of Philadelphia and for a global Fortune 30 company. It's my day job that pays the bills. And then the rest of the time, I'm a husband to a wonderful wife who allows me to chase my dreams, father to two fabulous young adults, grandfather, and somehow in my spare time, I managed to find the time to write, um, usually my books, but a lot of short stories and other things, whether it's for different charities or just Facebook groups. Um, I've lived in this area for, I'm going to age myself a little bit, but 30 plus years. Um, and I really love it. We're about an hour from the shore, uh, less than that, 20 minutes from Philadelphia, and where there is great food, great fun, and really, really great history. Um, and one of the things I really love about Philly is the inspiration it gives me, whether I am walking the streets, going to work, doing whatever I'm doing, really, really gives me a chance to see the city live, to feel it, and use it. Quite honestly, for different parts of my book, whether it's placing a home where the characters might live, a building where they would work, or um, just in general, you know, um, pulling the vibe from the city. Um, and so that's mostly about me. Um, I've been writing. I published my first novel in 2014. Probably been writing short stories off and on since. And we can talk about that a little bit more. But then really uh, got into writing my novels and really I love to read, so um, that helps drive my writing as well. That and travel. Travel's my other big um, hobby or joy that I love to do.
Well, I read your book, and five-star read, by the way, everyone.
Thank you.
It was called Cutter, your first novel, I believe that one was.
Yes.
And I was going to ask you about that very thing. If your job influences your writing, because him being a big finance guy, or your main character, Robert Cutter, um, and uh, and the area, because yeah, it was kind of set in the New York Philly
Mhm.
area.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. My job is a little more internal, so corporate finance. Um, but throughout my career, I've always worked in finance or business intelligence. So I'm aware of the financial world, so to speak. And it made it a little bit easier for me to write some of those components of the story. Um, and um, that made it a little bit easier from that standpoint. And then, like I said, Philly, New York, two of the places work and live here. And then New York, I visit New York all the time. Um, and in Qatar, there's a little bit of Cape May, which is the shore that's about an hour. Um, and then in future books, it shows up a lot more. And Again, like I said, there is just a lot of inspiration that I take from the city, from the vibe, from the building itself, and the surrounding areas that I put in the book. And occasionally I'll get some feedback from somebody and they'll say, "Hey, I read your book and it was awesome. And by the way, I know the street you're talking about because I used to live there." So it's a really, really cool place. Plus, I also find that honestly, it's easier to write about places I know, places I've been, or things that I've seen than trying to make up a world. And hopefully, those folks who do read it and do recognize those see I'm going to say, the reality in it. Um, and I like to think that that way people can read the book and feel like they're actually there as well.
Yeah, I enjoy reading books. I've read a lot of authors that have written about this area, and it seems more fun to read a book when you know the places that they're talking about. It
Yeah.
makes it more realistic for you. So I enjoy that, and I enjoyed that in your book.
Thank you.
Being a kind of hometown girl around that stuff. Uh, so yeah, I did enjoy that, and it was a really good book. Now you travel a lot. Do you use any of that in your books?
Definitely. Yeah. So when I wrote my first book, I was traveling more to Las Vegas. There's a large chunk in the first book that has to do with
Yes.
Las Vegas, and that continues throughout the three novels. Actually, the fourth one is in production, so to speak. Um, but then I pick some other random places either that I visited, I may call them out, whether it's London. I included a piece from Scotland. It could just be a hotel that they visit, or a restaurant that they've eaten at in the book. Could be someplace that I've eaten. So there, the thing that I've found as I've started writing more seriously, I'll say, is all you have to do is sort of look around you. You don't have to go far to find a British inspired restaurant that does a great British breakfast, proper British breakfast. Um, it's about 5 blocks from here. It's a restaurant we love to go to. And I slipped it into a different short story that I've written. And my wife was reading it. She started to laugh when she saw that I had included it without naming it. She, of course, knew what I was talking about. So yeah, it's a little bit of fun that I slip different things in there. Um, and again, as I said, knowing the area by keeping it to what I know makes it much easier for me to make sure I get the story right, which for me is really important.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that. Do you find it harder to? I like the way you put the list of characters in the beginning of your book. Do you find it harder to keep track when you have more characters?
Um, the short answer is yes, I do. Because I try to give most of the people, if they're going to be recurring within the book, then I'll try to keep them named and include them somewhere so you can always go back. When I was very young, in my teens and reading the books, some of the books I read, I distinctly remember they did the same thing. They would list all of the characters. And one of the reasons I really like that is when you get into a book and it's hey Jack or hey John, right? Be able to flip back to the front and look and read and oh, Jack is this, right? That's his title, his job, or whatever. And John is this person. Now, when you go back through, you can read that with a different lens. And again, it hopefully feels more real to people that they'll read it and say, okay, I know who John is. I know who Jack is. So I really try to, it's my way of sort of including the reader in knowing who the characters really are.
I've done that in my Kane novels. I have the list of characters. There are so many of them that kind of go in and out through all the books that I think it helps the reader to, especially if you start on a second or third book, and it kind of adds a little bit of background for the reader. You put so and so, blah blah blah, and it gives her a little bit of explanation about what they might have done in the first or second book if you're reading the third book.
Absolutely. And then it's funny, a lot of times I've created a list that I have readily available. So if I'm writing, I can always flip back over to the list and see, okay, who did I have in this role before? Even if they're just popping in for one scene and it's not a big deal. But again, to get that name right gives the reader a consistency so they can do the same thing and say, oh, I remember this person. Or go back to one of the other books. What were they there? And occasionally their titles or roles will change. They move up the ladder a bit. So I've got people in the fourth novel who, when I get to giving them their titles and roles, some of them will have changed, which is normal.
So absolutely.
That's part of life. Get a new title.
Yep. I saw that already at the end of the book. People were starting to change already, and that's good. I'll have to read the second one now. I get that way. I have to find out what happens next. I'm always doing that. So I'll have like all these book twos waiting on me. And it's like, once I have all my required reading done, I can scurry back and start reading book twos finally. Oh, yay, I have this one waiting. I love that stuff. Yeah. It's like a treat. It's like a treat. You got your homework done. Now you can have your treat reading.
Yeah. When I started writing my second novel, and along those lines is I decided to write something different. Okay. I was a couple of chapters in and I asked my wife something and she looks at me and she goes, "Did you start a new novel?" I said, "Yeah." Different characters. She said, "Well, wait, don't change the characters. We love these guys. And don't leave this one out." Like she specifically said, no, you got to keep him in there and give him a good part because we like him. And I was like, all right, there you go. So I really tried to do that. I think it helps, again, sort of build that friendship almost with those characters. I was a big fan of the Tom Clancy novels. And the way I always remembered the way he would build his characters. And there could be 6 primary characters, but a laundry list of other people. And he was another writer who would put in the list of characters because you had to be able to go back and forth. But when he brought them all together, he suddenly had that cohesive list that now makes all the sense to the reader. And you really feel like you know them a little bit better.
You see, I write horror, so I have to kill mine off. And I did have one girl just in tears when I killed this one man. She said, "How could you do that?" Well, because he was the bad guy. I'm sorry it didn't come out till the end of the book, and then you're so sad about it. But it had to happen that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm the opposite. I got to kill him off. Well, Nina has given us many questions for you, and she loves my hair. Oh, Nina. yuck, I got to go back to the pink. This blue stuff is just, I feel like Smurfette. Ugh. But it did get me the grandson. We just had the what do you call it? The gender reveal party for my
Okay.
son and his fiance, and it was a boy. I wanted a boy.
Yay.
I have 3 granddaughters and only 1 grandson, and I have 5 sons. So I was hoping for a boy, and I got the boy. But now that I have the boy, I want my pink back. I can't get this blue washed out fast enough.
Looks
So
like Nina likes it because it matches her
yeah, her
photo there.
pretty little thing there. I
Yeah.
know. So let's get a Nina question. Who inspired you to become an author?
That's a really good question. I think there's sort of 2 answers to it. And the first was in high school, I read an author who wrote suspense thrillers that took place in World War II. And to this day, I can pick up one of his novels, read it, and absolutely love it. Like, sit on the edge of my seat, love it. And so part of that inspired me that if I'm going to write, that's the way I want it to come across as a really good story. And hopefully I've accomplished that so far.
I believe you have.
The other person, thank you. And the other person was actually one of my English teachers in high school. And so I was never a big English person, let's be honest. It's why I write, not edit. I let somebody else do that. But he had for a homework assignment this one time, he had us all write a short story. And I don't remember the one I wrote because I'm old enough that it was on paper. And his notes for me were really nice. They're really insightful. Some changes, tweaks he suggested. But his final comment was, "This is absolutely incredible." And I wrote a short story about a dragon. And I really don't remember it. But I remember his words were, "This is an incredible story. You really need to figure out how to write more." And it took 30 plus years, maybe 40, before I sat down one day and my wife and I were driving down to the shore, and I had a paper and pen with me for some reason, and wrote a short story. And the time and the hour it took us to drive down, it's very short. But then I finished it on the beach, and it was pretty good, I guess. I haven't picked it up in a while to read it. But my wife loved it, and her comment was sort of the same thing: "Is this is really good? You should do this more often." So both the teacher and the other author were really what inspired me to be able to sit down and tell a story. My wife says when I tell a story, I tend to ramble. She's not wrong, but I carry that into my books and try to improve on it a bit. But it's always been something I've enjoyed. And once I really started writing and really sat down to do it, think about it in those terms of writing a novel, I get a lot of joy out of it. And whatever we're doing, if I'm on a flight, sitting on the couch watching the Phillies play or whatever it might be, it gives me the opportunity to really focus on writing, and to some extent let the rest of the world go and just focus on my world and my characters.
I get that. I really do. Because I do the same thing. What is the hardest scene to write in one of your books, and why?
One of the hardest, and I didn't plan it to be that way was I killed off a character. And part of the reason I killed him off was I needed my character, Robert, to go through some struggles. And that was going to be one of them. It was more of a health or a physical health issue for him. And that
Oh no, I hope it's not who I think it is.
you don't, I don't think you know him in the first one.
Oh, okay.
See, I try not to kill off the really, really good ones. But the hard scene for me to write was the funeral scene.
Oh.
And there really were two reasons. The first was the person who died was in the military. And so I really wanted to give him a military funeral. That's not something you can just fake.
No.
I don't like faking anything in my books. I really want them to be as real as possible. And so it took some research. It took, I think I even either wrote to the Pentagon or called them and got routed through to find the answer of where to go. And I spent about 2 hours on the phone with a gentleman from a military cemetery. And he talked to me a lot about the funeral and how it would normally go. And why? What do they mean? What do these pieces that we're doing mean? And so it took a lot of research and a lot of understanding to write it, which was part of why it was hard. And the second part is, I'm trying to say this without giving away anything, but I needed to really get that emotion out of more so two of the characters specifically. And so really getting them embedded into that funeral and feeling it took a lot of work from my part. Again, because I really needed people to feel that. And that was hard. And to this day, which now it's been years since I wrote it, if I'm going to a signing and I'm going to do a reading, on the one hand, I want to read that scene. On the other hand, I can't. Even when I think about it, I tend to well up a little bit and I can feel that emotion coming through.
Oh.
So hopefully, folks that have read it agree with me and think knocked it out of the park. But yeah, it was probably one of the hardest scenes to write.
Oh. I've never had to do that yet, so.
You write horror and you don't put a funeral in.
Nope.
So now you have to put one in the next one.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. you just did that to me.
See? Yeah.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question. This one I always love. This is a good question. If you could meet one of your characters, what would you say to them?
I could meet one of my characters.
It's a hard question.
That's a really hard question. Yeah. I would probably not want to meet Robert because I know him too well. There's a couple of others. One is their lead security person or bodyguard. And the other one had that role and has shifted a bit from it. And for either one of them, I would probably want to know, more so from the bodyguard, is what is it that drives him? He's former military, but military is usually more aggressive, right? They're protecting innocents, but they are fighting. That's their job. That's what they do, especially in special forces. So my question for him would be, how do you translate that kind of a mentality into the desire and the will to actually protect a private person?
He was my favorite character, by the way. He was my favorite character in the book.
He does not get killed off.
Yeah, that's who I was afraid you were going to tell me. I was like, no,
Nope.
no. Oh, he's fabulous. He really is.
Yeah.
On Saturdays when I do the news, I will also give a review of your book. And yeah, it was great. And he was like one of my favorite characters out of a book. He was something else. He just it made me smile the whole way through the book.
And the truth is he was one of the people my wife said, make sure that you put him back in.
Yes.
Because I just wrote him, he was needed and he was there and he had an important role, but I didn't want to keep having him in there. And in the second, he continues in that role. The third, his role, again, same role, but I give him a little twist with it. In Cutter Returns. So if you can get out to the third one I actually like. I shouldn't say this. I actually like the third one a little more than the second one. But the second one is also really good, and he plays an important role in that one. So, yeah.
He's like a badass with a heart. So and
You see a little more of that in the later books too.
oh,
He
good,
softens
good.
up.
Yeah, he was fabulous. I loved him to pieces.
Yeah.
So, okay, I guess it's time to wrap things up. I
Okay.
hate the wrap up part. Yeah, but yeah, we gotta. StreamYard only lets me have so much time here. So, thank you so much for being on the show. And when you have your next book out, be sure to get a hold of us because I would
Sure
love
will.
to hear about it.
Yeah.
And maybe by then I will have read the rest.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me today. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh,
I look forward to meeting maybe sometime and for one of the signings I have up there this year or next. I'm sure I'll be there. Be great to meet in person.
yes, it
Um,
would.
and as always, I'm on Facebook, and I think you have my link. So if anybody has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yes, and I'll tell you what, between here and Harrisburg, you can drop me up a cheesesteak. I'll send you my address. I'm right on the way.
That's my pleasure.
I'll meet you, off the interstate or the turnpike, whichever.
All right. You got it.
Okay. Well, thank you for being on the show. And thank you, Nina, for always being here. And thank you, Kenny, for tuning in. And Saturday, we have, oh, my mind just went totally blank. I'll let you know because
It's
my
a
mind just.
surprise.
Yes, we have a surprise guest Saturday. For
All right.
heaven's sakes.
Thank
And
you again.
everybody go get Cutter by
Thank you very
David
much.
Gordon. And it was a fabulous book, 5-star rating. You're going to love it. And after the show, if you want to post your links on my Facebook page so everybody can find you right after the show, Holly J. Gills is Saturday. See, I knew. I just went brain dead for a minute. It's a lack of supper time, I guess. I always wait till
Definitely.
after the show to eat. Okay, so apparently I need to be fed. Everybody have a great night. Thank you again, David. Nina, love y'all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Oops. And stream. Leave studio. Instagram.